This is Phyllis Parks, a broadcaster for WITY, and I am at the grand opening of the hog barn up here north of Fithian on the Shepherd Farm, set up by Parks Livestock. And I have with me Nic Anderson of the Illinois Livestock Development Group. And Nic, I know I've talked to you before earlier on in this, so tell me a little bit what Illinois Livestock Development Group does and then how you got involved with this hog barn.
Sure. So our livestock group is made up of all the commodity groups in Illinois, not only pork, beef, and dairy, but also corn, soy, and Farm Bureau. Why are those guys involved? Because we're big consumers of their products, and sure, Farm Bureau represents membership out here. So our job is to help people develop the livestock business in the state. Up in every 102 counties in the state, except maybe Chicago, we're in development. And it's important to grow not only the livestock side because we're big consumers of grain, but it's also a benefit to the community for tax base, employment, and really feed the resources that we have in rural America go well with livestock production. Vermilion County has needed some of that in the past. This is going to be a great addition, not only this barn, but the other barns that are permitted. So my job is to help out when people need to know, how do I permit? What does it take? What do I have to do to make sure I do the right things? So not only the Parks Group or the Equity Group that are involved in this project reach out and say, hey, can you give us some help? Hence, is this feasible to do? So we vet all that out before they ever send a permit in. So if you think about when this project started back in the wintertime, and then we had to go through a process to evaluate it and confirm it, and public hearing, and then the building, those thoughts happened a long time ago. So we try to develop those and make it feasible for folks to grow livestock in the state. Vermilion County's got a great opportunity here. We talked tonight about some of the numbers and the bushels of corn and the pork that's going to be produced. It's pretty amazing what will happen on this farm day in and day out.
Well, tell me a little bit about those numbers. I knew you were throwing them around, how many million of pork chops and bacon and bushels of corn and stuff.
Well, I'll start on the corn side. So we've got 8,200 head of pig spaces here. On an annual basis, they'll eat over 150,000 bushels of corn right here locally. That's our best way to do it. About 15,000 bushels of soybeans. And we think about the crop market out here, it's pretty important to have some of that basis back to us as agriculture. But on the consumer side, and that's what we always kind of miss out there, we drive by buildings in the country and what's in those barns. We know it's hog production. We might smell it. But really, in this barn annually, they're going to produce over 1 million pork chops every year, grown right here in Vermilion County. And really what tips it off to people, over 15 million slices of bacon produced right here on this farm.
How many hams?
Well, if I take my 8,200, that's an easy one. 8,200 twice a year, I'm going to be over 16,000 hams. That's a lot of Easter hams. And it's going to come every year for the next 20 years. That really adds up.
And you know, I like ham and beans, so I like that idea too.
Well, I think a lot of people do, and here's our separation from our communities. We sort of forgot we raise that locally. This is a great way to see what happens inside, know that we raise them here, have a nice pork chop dinner at an open house, and it's a really great message because all these people need to go out and tell that story back in their communities. Livestock's important. We need to do the right things. We need to be responsible to our neighborhoods, much like the Parks have done for the last 40 years. Some people didn't know what Parks was, but they've been here longer than some people have been alive. It's pretty amazing, and it's a great tribute not to only their family, but the other families they work with and the other families they support. That's always been agriculture's story. We just need to tell it more.
And I know Illinois seems to be, I think they say we're pretty high in the hog market and the corn and the beans and everything. But where do we rank? I mean, as far as something like this in with the rest of the states with these barns that's being put up?
Well, typically you look at the big corn and soybean states of Iowa and Illinois. You know, Iowa might do it one year. So number 1 and 2 back and forth. Soybeans maybe 2 and 3 back and forth. And if you think back in our history, Illinois used to be number 2 in pork production years and years ago, with Iowa always being number 1. But Illinois is now at number 4 in the U.S. for pork production. Behind it goes Iowa, North Carolina, Minnesota. We're not really raising that fewer pigs, they're just raising more. But we'll raise over 5 million head of pigs in the state of Illinois. If I can take those pork chop and bacon and ham numbers and put that on top of that, Illinois is a big factor in providing good, healthy, safe, affordable food to the public right here in our own state, mostly because of these corn and soybeans we have around in our rural communities.
Now, they still will take the corn and soybeans someplace, and I don't want people to think they're just going to bring it across the road here and feed it to the hogs.
And actually, the equity group that's helping out on the pig and the feed side bought that Horace mill not too far from here, and a lot of people market corn through that, so they will process that corn, grind it, add the soybean meal, and balance those diets for these pigs. It's pretty scientific. They'll bring it out on a weekly or bi-weekly basis and fill these big bins that we have, feed the pigs every day. Farming's a 24-hour thing. You know, we just don't have pork chops and go home. So we're here in the morning and the night, all through the hours. There's some great technology in this barn to monitor these, so we have 24-hour surveillance of pigs. And it's about pig care and pig performance, and we can do that on good Illinois corn and soybeans right here locally and processed locally.
Well, yes, we can. And you mentioned technology. They said something about all the computer systems and everything in there, and I know that's just getting to be quite a thing now with monitoring cows and pigs and sows and all those things with technology now. So I'm assuming this is state of the art in there. I haven't seen it yet.
It is, not only from the feeders and how we feed the pigs, wet, dry feeders, how many spaces there are. There's some science behind that, how big the pens are, but the technology that we see on fan control, and that I can take a smartphone and know what the temperature is in every part of that barn. And it's really about pig comfort and pig care that we have better access to that, because you and I know pig well-being is indicative of how well you take care of them and performance. If they don't perform, we're not in a very good spot and it doesn't return to us. We've known that our whole lives, being from the livestock side. We need to tell that story more. But anything that is in this barn is for the pig's benefit, to make sure we take care of it the right way and it can perform.
I think one more question that everybody says is the manure, the smell, and it's ground into the ground, or however you want to say it, drug into the ground and then covered, so there shouldn't be much of that.
Well, and it's really a resource we've always had, and we're going to apply it and incorporate it into the ground with injection. This barn can fertilize about 1,000 acres. That 1,000 acres of fertilizer is fertilizer that we don't have to bring from an outside source. We import fertilizer commercially to this country with potash and nitrogen. Nitrogen is an oil-based product. We can do that organically on this farm. It's a very sustainable system, and it's sort of self-contained, and the end benefit is great food products for pork and pork chops and Easter hams.
Yes, and it's a benefit to the farmer to have this here because he gets the fertilizer.
It is, and I think it supports agriculture and agriculture communities all the way down the road. It might not be immediately direct to you as a neighbor, but somewhere that benefit's going to come back, whether it's through taxes, school districts, or feeding our families.
Yes, and thank you very much, Nic Anderson with Illinois Livestock Development Group.
Great, Phyllis. Thanks for coming out. I knew you wouldn't miss it.
Okay, thank you. This is Phyllis Parks with WITY.